Spring is around the corner, and my next guest knows a thing or two about flowering spring bulbs. A career in politics teamed with his Lincolnshire farming business growing a variety of daffodils and tulips. Join me as I chat with the Right Honourable Lord Taylor of Holbeach. Hello, welcome to the Countryside Kitchen Meets, a food and farming podcast. I'm Millie Fyfe, your host. I'm a mum of two, farmer's wife, food producer, and passionate about flying the flag for British food and farming. Today we are chatting to the Right Honourable Lord Taylor of Holbeach, a Lincolnshire-based farmer and grower who has had a distinguished career in politics, which continues today. Then I'll give you some inspiration when it comes to mealtime prep and some recipes to share, meaning you can juggle family life with the children and cook a tasty, nutritious meal too. Okay, let's introduce my guest. If you Google Lord Taylor of Holbeach, or John as I know him, you'll find a whole host of detailed information on his political career spanning several decades, starting in the 1960s to date for the Conservative Party. John was made a life peer in 2006 and was Chief Whip of the House of Lords from 2014 to 2019. I've known John for many years through my work with the Council for Awards of the Royal Agricultural Societies. The organisation is fortunate to have John as a fellow, and each year Lord Taylor is our sponsoring peer for an award ceremony in the House. John's feet are firmly rooted in agriculture, and I want to explore some more with him. So without further ado, let's bring him into the conversation. Hello, John. How are you?
Hello, Millie. Nice to be with you this morning.
Now, you have such an interesting and varied background. Tell me about your involvement with the farming industry.
Yes, well, it's quite complicated in a way. I left school quite early on. I did biological and scientific subjects at A and S level, in fact, and left school at 17, having got all the things I needed to go to university. And much to some people's disappointment, I didn't go. I went and joined the family business, which is a rather different sort of business because although we're farmers, we're principally known to the public as bulb growers.
Yes.
Because we supply so many bulbs to both to the domestic consumer, but also to the garden centres and parks and gardens of the United Kingdom. So it's quite a business, and at the moment it's really busy out there.
I can imagine. Well, that's it. It's a name that I recognise, and obviously then when I got to know you a little bit more, I'm really excited to find out more about the business, but also at some point I would like to come over and have a look around, because obviously I am very interested and take part in a lot of gardening at home, and I grow a lot, so I'm fascinated to sort of understand more about the business, really.
Yes, well, we actually have a charity bulb sale, which you might take note of, although I'm not going to be able to be here
Yes.
when it's on. But we perhaps can talk about that a bit later.
Yes.
The family business has been going for over 100 years now.
Yeah.
And its origins are quite interesting. My grandfather, Otto Augustus Taylor, named after a German uncle he had, was fighting in the First World War when he was badly gassed. And he'd been working in London in a chemist shop in the city of London. And they told him that it was really very silly of him to try and keep that profession, and that he'd be better off seeking fresh air in the country. And he applied and got a Crown Colony holding here in Holbeach. And as a result of that, Taylor's moved to Holbeach, and he started growing bulbs, because he knew just growing potatoes and wheat on 10 acres of land was not going to be a way of making a living. He did know growing flowers would be a way of making a living, And so that's when he started bulb growing.
Fantastic. And so, as we said, many people have heard of Taylor's bulbs. At what point did the flower bulb business really grow, and what does it look like today?
Well, it's changed even in my lifetime.
Mm,
First, people to grow bulbs actually started growing bulbs in the Spalding area just before the First World War.
mm,
They were often Dutchmen who'd come here. The
mm,
similarity of the topography of the area around the Lincolnshire fens and the siltlands is so similar to Holland that it's called South Holland. I live in the district of South Holland, so
yes.
it's not surprising in a way that it attracted Dutch people who after all, drained so many of the fens. They grew bulbs. And my grandfather was part of the post-World War One bulb growing development, which was extensive. A lot of English people realized that this was an opportunity for them, and they were growing all sorts of bulbs, hyacinths, tulips, daffodils, everything. But when the Second World War started, because of the need to grow food, bulb acreages were compulsorily reduced. Everybody had to grow less bulbs to a quarter of what you'd had before the war.
Yes.
And so the surplus bulbs were actually exported to the United States in order to pay for provisions that were coming over the other way.
Right.
There was an example of how in wartime everybody had to rally to achieve all this. But it meant after the Second World War, it was much more difficult because most people were concentrating on building up their stocks. And we were very involved with flower production in those days. And our principal task was with the nursery we had here, growing flowers in the winter and flowers in the summertime. But the acreages grew. In this area, it became a tourist attraction.
Yes.
Coachloads of people would come round on the tulip Sundays in April and May.
Yeah.
And it was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
People would come in and we were selling flowers by the side of the road. I personally was selling flowers by the side of the road. The main road went past here in those days. It's amazing to think that it was a main road, but it was the main road. And we've got photographs of coaches parked in our vestigial farmyard here, looking at the bulb fields.
Yeah.
And that was, quite important. It still remains a bit of a tourist attraction, but not as much as it was.
No, but I mean, to grow bulbs, obviously we think of buying your bulbs, and you buy daffodil bulbs, you buy tulip bulbs, but how do you breed them? Are you collecting the seed, or how does that actually work?
Well, in fact, most bulbs are reproduced vegetatively.
Right.
And so you actually increase your bulbs vegetatively. In terms of crossing bulbs, you remove the anthers from one and you place the pollen from one on the stigma of another of the, so that you actually do get seed pods containing seeds, but it takes you about 10 years before you've got flowering bulbs from a planted seed. It's a difficult and long-term job, and my father did do this through the 50s and 60s, and we did produce a number of very interesting varieties. But it's generally left now to particular specialists, many of whom are almost amateurs. And it goes on across the world, so that there's an American Daffodil Society, there's daffodil societies in Australia and New Zealand. And so it's a continuous process.
Yeah. And so tell me what would be your favorite flower? Have you got a certain variety that you admire?
Well, it's very difficult to say. Some I like. There's if you go to Hortus Bovorum in the Netherlands,
Mm,
it's in Limmer, north of Alkmaar. If you go there, you'll find a garden of historic varieties, and many of the varieties in there are not they're not great shapes nowadays.
mm,
They're old and they were not as robust as the current varieties.
mm,
But it's lovely to see them.
mm.
So I've been able to take a variety that we had as a seedling and present it to the late Queen Elizabeth on her 90th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, I was captain of the Gentlemen at Arms, and we can talk about the politics.
Yeah.
That's why that came in.
Yeah.
I was captain of the Queen's historic bodyguard, the chaps with the plumed helmets,
Mm,
um, and I presented a daffodil called Gentlemen at Arms. And I'm very proud of that because
yeah.
bringing my two lives as a politician and as a bulb grower together.
Yeah.
And we grow a lot of it, and it's a very successful variety.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So what variety is it called? I'll have to have a look out for it.
It's called Gentlemen at Arms.
Gentleman at Arms. Right, I'll remember that.
Yes.
I'll have to Google
Okay.
that sometime.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's in. Well, you'll find out about the core, the honourable core of the Gentlemen at Arms, but more to the point, you'll find that it is a daffodil, and it's in Taylor's bulb catalogue for the retail.
Excellent. Oh, brilliant. Well, I'm definitely going to get my
And
order in.
yeah.
Excellent. How much time, John, is dedicated, or how much of your life have you dedicated to your political career? Because as I mentioned in my intro, it's kind of spanned quite a number of decades. How did it all start?
Well, it's sort of it started strangely enough through me realizing that I could have and probably should have gone to university.
Mm.
I've had a successful life, so by most people's, but I wouldn't recommend it. It could have gone wrong,
Mm,
but it didn't for me. So I was very lucky.
mm,
And when I left school, I came to work at home, and then I said to my father, I really want to go and work in Holland. And he made arrangements for me to go and work in Holland. And I learnt Dutch. I'm the president of the Anglo-Netherlands Society in this country.
mhm,
And I'm shortly to go to Amsterdam to speak to a Dutch audience.
mm,
So that's been, it was a good part of my life. And when I was there, a group of people came over from, including my father, and a couple of influential individuals. As a result, I ended up getting jobs with them
mm,
because when I decided to go to university, it was, and I got in, but
mm,
this was about 3 years after I'd left school.
mhm.
But unfortunately, I never went because I got offered a really interesting job, and I went to work for the National Farmers Union.
Ah,
And at the
okay.
time, we were setting up a bulb growing cooperative here. So growers could market their bulbs together collectively.
Mm,
We were setting up a show garden to
mhm,
match the Keukenhof, which I'd been round in Holland with. The person I was working with was the chairman of the Keukenhof. The great influential people of Baldwin were on that little trip with me as well. And I think partly because of that, I sort of impressed them as being a keen young man type of thing. Give this bloke a job. And I really did enjoy working for the National Farmers Union.
mm.
I then decided to go back home, and I was interrupted yet again by another person who'd been in that group, and they wanted me to join their new company set up to market bulbs to nurseries in the area. And
Mhm,
I did that. It was part of the Geest organization, which was very important in Spalding at the time as well. And I did that for 3 years. And the net effect was that I had the training to get me interested.
mm,
And the politics came in, of course. because I was desperate, having been a young farmer, and I'm still was a young farmer, I joined the Young Conservatives as well.
Yeah.
So I could go out on a Tuesday night for the Young Conservatives and on a Wednesday night, on a Thursday night for the Young Farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a social life and I had a damn good time.
Yeah. Excellent.
But I then ended up back at home doing all that I'd learned for my family business, and I'm delighted.
Mm-hmm.
Did my politics in the spare time, stood for Parliament a couple of times, stood for European elections when they were first held in 1979.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I've been quite involved in politics and chaired the Conservative Party conference and headed up the voluntary party, was deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, in charge of candidates.
Yeah.
All these sort of things. And I was doing this as a voluntary thing.
Yeah.
But somehow I had a very tolerant wife. And I was able to do this in my spare time.
Yeah, sure.
I had plenty of energy.
Yeah.
And I could, it made no difference to do a hard day's work and then go off to a meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, fantastic. And today, do you spend much of your time in London, or is it sort of split between home and the house?
Well, I actually have quite firm views really about these things. Some of it happened because I had no choice. I became a minister, and when you become I was first of all on the opposition front bench as soon as I got in the House of Lords, more or less, on the opposition front bench as part of the agricultural team. I was in charge of that eventually. And then I thought when we won the election, I'd become a minister in DEFRA. But that was not to be. I ended up being asked to go to the Cabinet Office and do a very complicated piece of legislation, which actually earned me Peer of the Year award, which I was lucky to get, but it was a terrific challenge.
Yeah.
And I did go to DEFRA, but only for a year. And then I was into the Home Office under Theresa May. And then I was asked by David Cameron to become the Chief Whip in the House of Lords. Well, these are all terrific jobs and a terrific challenge. And I decided that I couldn't combine that and running the business. And I got a son working here in the business. I have another son who works for Lloyd's of London and is doing extremely well in that particular profession. But I didn't want to be in Adam's way. And frankly, as long as I had my pension, which I've been able to accumulate through the business, I didn't need the farm. And so I handed over my shares in the business to my son, and my brother, who was working with me as well, handed his over. And so we live off our pensions, and we have nothing to do with the management business at all. So I live here.
Yes.
I'm on the job, and I go round and I know what's going on.
Yes.
It's not my responsibility.
No.
I believe earnestly that when people are marketing product, they've got to be contemporary with their market. It's no use an old man. I'm nearly 80. I'll be 80 in a couple of months' time. If you're that old, you can't expect to understand what young people are wanting and not understand young lives quite as well as you should. But it's better to have people who are living those sort of lives, making the decisions and taking responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, within agriculture in general, succession planning is so important, yet so many people get it so wrong, don't they?
So a lot of people don't even do it.
No.
And I even know of some professional friends of mine who made no provision for their old age, and their wives have no idea what happens when, unfortunately, they're bereaved. And And I can't recommend enough.
Mm.
Get powers of attorney in place,
Yeah.
everything properly organized, because life is unremitting in its toll on people. And eventually, if you leave behind a mess, you will not be thanked.
No.
There's a lot of sense. And anyway, for the health of the businesses, it's much better that young people have the energy and drive necessary for the business. But
Yeah.
I still love the job.
Yeah.
Go to Holland at least once a year,
Yeah.
and usually twice, and I'm very fond of it. But I also like my house in France, and I'm off to Venice this weekend as well.
Lovely.
So I can do that.
Yeah.
But I do spend most of the time when the House is sitting in Parliament, because
Yeah.
having been Chief Whip and asked people to go and vote for the party, it's very difficult to be skiving off. Actually, they do need people there to vote in
Yeah.
support of the government's policy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it does sound like you've got a very good work-life balance, but I'm sure it's burning the midnight oil on occasions and perhaps burning the candle at both ends. But you've obviously dedicated a lot of your life, and you've still got a lot to give. It would seem.
Well, I enjoy things, but I am trying to take it a little bit easier, because my wife's just going around the garden. I can see from my window here.
Yes.
She's going around our garden. We've got a lovely garden here. We live in a very nice farmhouse, which so I was brought up in this farmhouse. I live here still. There's not many people can say that.
No.
Born in Holbeach, and I hope when the end comes, I'll die in Holbeach.
Yeah.
But I don't want to die yet, because
No.
too many more things to do.
Absolutely. Well, you've inspired. I'm now already thinking in my head. I think with Caras, we ought to organise a trip to Holland. Go and see all these gardens and things. It would be wonderful to go and explore.
Well, one has to say that the Netherlands is a terrific place. There's a horticultural specialist committee at the moment. I'm on the liaison committee, and one of the committees we chose, and I can't say it was anything to do with me, because I opted out of the discussion because I had a vested interest. But they chose horticulture as a topic, and they went to the Netherlands, because if you want to be successful in horticulture, you've got to know what's going on in the Netherlands. Not the only place that's happening, and a lot of produce is grown in Spain, North Africa, and South America now. Central and South America as well. So it comes from all over the place. But a lot of the real experimental work, which we've lost out on here. I was a founder member of the Horticultural Development Board when it was set up, because I was quite involved in all those. I don't know how I found the time to do that sort of thing. The research institutes in this country have tended to decline, whereas the Netherlands, they still have at Wageningen, one of the most forward-looking outfits. Not that we are behind. I mean, AHIP is fantastic. We've got a lot of good. The Institute of Agricultural Botany, Cambridge, those sort of things are really great leaders, but they're not part of the state-run educational system that we used to have here, which is a pity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I want to try and explore that some more. I think I'll try and organise a trip in the future, although I'm probably a glutton for punishment, because I've got quite a lot on my plate myself.
Where you'll end up, and you'll end up like me. There you are.
Now let's turn our attention to cooking. Do you get much time to cook or prepare meals? What are your dishes that you enjoy cooking or eating, John?
I enjoy my food. Went out 2 days ago because it was my wife's birthday. In fact, we're going out again tomorrow night, because the family are joining us at my wife's birthday celebration.
Yes.
But I'm really ace at certain elements of a meal. I'm quite good at getting the cheese on a cheese board and putting it on the table.
Yeah.
I can convey the fruit from the kitchen to the dining table.
Yeah.
My wife and I tend to have dinner in the evenings in
Yes.
a rather more formal setting. Did you say cooking?
Cooking and eating, either or, really.
Well, I might be all right at cooking up politics, but I'm not very good at cooking food. I don't think my wife would trust me to boil an egg. So I can put the toast in the toaster, but that's about all.
Yeah.
Food is really I love food,
Yes.
and I try not to eat too much of it. I try to have a proper life balance on food and exercise and everything else.
There's some good cheeses in Lincolnshire, though, isn't there?
Well,
You've
there
got
are, yes. There are.
you've got Coates Hill, haven't you? And Lincolnshire Poacher.
That's right. And I also have to say I quite like French cheeses and French wine.
Yes. Yes.
France.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm not saying that English cheese is inferior. It's different.
Yes.
And actually, when in France we tend to eat French cheese, and when in England we'll eat English cheese.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, on a few previous podcasts, I've interviewed cheese producers and dairy farmers, and we've sort of definitely highlighted some of the regional differences as well in cheese, as well as different countries. And it's I think in England there's over 700 different varieties. It's amazing what we've got.
Yes.
And it's
Well, it was de Gaulle, wasn't it? So how could he govern a country that has so many different cheeses? But the same is true of Britain. Strange thing is, both wine and cheese are dependent on skill of the maker.
Yes.
And consistency in terms of product. So that you get a reputation for producing something that's going to taste the same as it did last time and the same time. But they are quite similar, and the raw product in one case is milk, and the other case is grape juice.
Yeah.
But it's the way they're brought together and handled that makes the difference.
Yeah, definitely. Well, seasonality is such an important part of cheese and wine, isn't it? And climate change, and there's so many different contributing factors. And in a previous podcast episode, I was talking about the science that goes into it. Like you say, the skill of the cheesemaker or the winemaker, for example, the consistency that if you have it one day and then have it 6 months later, it's got to sort of taste the same because that's what the consumer expects as well.
Yes, I'm not a climate change cynic, but I do think we ought to be aware that in Roman times, grapes were grown in Lincoln, and things are the climate has changed. I don't know. It is the moment it's changing, and there are reasons why it might be changing too. But we have to acknowledge that some English sparkling wines are tremendous.
Yes. Yeah.
The Champagne region in France is actually quite a cold spot in France. And the reason why they can produce champagne there is because of the fact it's cooler. It's east of Paris, and it's cooler in the winter months because you're getting a continental climate there. Makes quite a difference, as with the Burgundy wine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, how can people find out more about you, John? Have you got a website? Are you on social media? I ask this question of everybody, but if people want to find out more information, I mean, I mentioned in my introduction that when you Google your name, there's lots that comes up because you are even on Wikipedia, I found out.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. To be honest, I don't know where this stuff comes from. It's like who's who. I'm in who's who, but it's summarizes to have your life in a couple of paragraphs is a bit sort of funny because it's not at all about you really. It's just about geographical map. It's like a map almost.
Yes,
Like.
yes,
But I don't have a website. I go on Instagram because tailors have got an Instagram page,
yes,
and I know got a Facebook page.
yes, yes.
Bulbs.co.uk is the retail website,
Mm-hmm.
bulbs.co.uk,
Yeah,
and bulbs.co.uk is the website,
brilliant.
the Instagram and Facebook. But Taylor's Bulbs is for people who are retailers, want to buy, and that's tailors-bulbs.com.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's, but they all in effect come through the office,
yeah,
and they're all part and parcel. They're part of the diversification is to try and not keep those businesses separate because they feed off each other.
mm,
There's obviously a world of difference between looking after somebody wanting to plant 20, 30 tulips, and somebody wanting to buy 20 tons of daffodils.
yeah, yeah.
But
No, absolutely.
slightly different scale of operation.
Yes,
You have to be able to do both, and we do both.
yeah,
Um, around 600 varieties of daffodils in
yeah,
that specialist section.
yeah,
These new varieties are coming along, and where we're trying to grow them up to commercial sizes.
mm,
Some will never develop into commercial quantity because they're nice,
mm,
interesting, but they're probably not as good as something which we can be growing at a field level on a larger scale.
yeah,
So you might get plots 2 square meters of a variety only. But we have also some varieties where we're planting, 100 tons of a particular variety of
yeah,
bills as seed stock, but they are for large scale selling,
yeah.
different scale.
Well, I'll share all the links in the show notes, so that people can find out more. All of those links that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
so that people can find out more. But here are a few ideas for things that you can try at home. Shepherd's pie, a real winter warmer. Who can't beat the comforting feeling of coming into the warm on a cold, crisp day to eat or share a meal such as shepherd's pie? I'll share the recipe in the show notes, but you'll need lamb's mince, potato, cream, cheese, plenty of vegetables, including an onion, tomatoes, carrots, stock, and some rosemary. This recipe does take a bit of time to prepare, but you won't be disappointed. And you can even hide a whole host of vegetables within it so the kids won't even notice. In season right now, this podcast is going out in January. So, January time, beetroot, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, leeks, parsnip, potatoes. Now, why is seasonality important? Well, in my opinion, and of many others, it is for a number of reasons, really, to reduce the energy needed to grow and transport the food we eat, to avoid paying a premium for food that could be scarcer or has travelled a long way, to support our local economy, but also it tends to be fresher and more nutritious because you're getting it from somewhere local and supporting a local business. Now, at this time of year, you might be feeling the pinch, but I always find that food lifts the soul. Making a dish such as cauliflower cheese is my idea of food heaven and combines a vegetable that is in season along with some tasty bechamel cheese sauce and lots more cheese. You can add it to some pasta for mac and cheese or make it as a side dish to accompany a roast dinner. Would that be your idea of food heaven, John?
Well, should I tell you, by a great coincidence, we had shepherd's pie for dinner last night.
Oh, there we are.
You're quite right. It does take quite a bit of preparation,
Yes.
but my wife, it was such a coincidence, really.
Yeah.
But it was very, very pleasant. And
Yes.
it's quite a useful dish because you can actually eat one bit of it, and then come back and have the other bit of it another night.
Yes.
So this is, we'll no doubt be eating this at the weekend as well.
Yes.
Because going up to London tonight, won't have any dinner at all. But I'll be Anglo-Netherlands stuff. And then I have told you I'm going to celebrate my wife's birthday at a restaurant tomorrow.
Yes. Lovely. Oh, fantastic. Well, I hope you have a wonderful time, and I hope you have something else on the menu that isn't shepherd's pie, but I'm glad that it's such a happy coincidence, because like you, it is a wonderful dish and something that I will make a big vat of it and have it on several occasions. So it's very much a good batch cook dish for sure.
I agree. And I think tomorrow night we might have some of that sparkling wine, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I like the sound of that. Okay, that's all we've got time for today. Don't forget to tune into the next episode of the Countryside Kitchen Meets on the 1st of each month, and you can subscribe on all major podcast streaming platforms. And please do drop me a line. I love to hear from you. I love to find out what you're cooking, what your favorite things are to eat. Tell me about small businesses that you found, those little gems, because I always like to shine a light on more producers around the country. And don't forget, you can also follow on Instagram and Facebook and the food blog, which is No Fuss Meals for Busy Parents, for some top tips, time-saving hacks and recipe ideas. Thank you so much, John, for joining me. It's been wonderful to hear more about your career history and about the Taylor's bulbs, because there's so much that we could just chat all day, couldn't we?
Yes, and I'm looking forward to the awards ceremony.
Yes.
We'll enjoy that too.
We will. All right. Well, thank you. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.